Have you here? We are going to get into the real basics of meditation, which, paradoxically, it's also a very profound teaching because it's so simple, it might be overlooked. So, we're going to be dealing with the three fundamental principles of meditation according to Buddhism. We're going to really focus in on the first one tonight. And the three, if you don't know, it's sila or shila in the original languages, Pali or Sanskrit, but it means basically discipline or training in morality. And then you have the second step, which is concentration or samadhi. And then you have the third, which is wisdom or panya, prajna. And so the three go together. They're actually integral. They all interrelate. They all feed and, depend on one another. There's a synergy. But where we begin as meditators at ground floor is in training in morality. We have to, as it's been said, clean the cloth before you dye it, right? You have to wash your clothes before you put them in the dryer. You just can't take your clothes off and throw them in the dryer and wear them again. So the dirt has to come off. And so the training in morality is really that. It's very attentive to what is going on at the mind level, the speech level, and the level of the body or action level. So we keep coming back to this metaphor of the garden. And we've been talking about the garden of the heart. And so the primal couple in the Bible are gardeners, right? And you see this in the gospel too. Jesus is mistaken for a gardener at the resurrection site. And so gardener is this archetype of who we really are in our spiritual essence. We're here to keep and cultivate. These are the words actually, shamar and avad in Hebrew, to protect, to nourish, and to serve or cultivate the garden. And so that's what we can do when we're in a healthy frame of mind. If we're good gardeners, gardeners don't make the plants, they don't make the plants grow, but they can cultivate the plants. And really what we're talking about here is we all have the Buddha seed planted within our heart, or the Christ seed, right? The sower went out to sow, and he sows the word. This is the Buddha seed. And so we have to actually nourish the heart, feed and cultivate the heart. And how best to do that is we first learn how to guard and keep our mind, speech, and action pure. Because what happens is when the mind and our speech and our actions are pure, we have an easier time going into concentration. We can actually have less inner turmoil and distractions because we're being very mindful and attentive to what we're doing, saying, and thinking. This is actually the sign of integrity. Integrity means everything is operating in unison. So you have your thoughts mirroring your words are mirroring your actions and extending in like kind. And so one who lives by his or her word and who lives in integrity is making sure that everything is lining up in this nice aligned flow of morality, virtue, right? And one of the things that we want to recognize too is, like we've been saying, it's a cultivating process. So there's never judgment. There's never self-criticism or berating that I should be better, I should be farther along, I shouldn't have done that or said that. Well, things happen, but what you do is you bring your attention back immediately and you recognize this was not a wholesome action. It was an unwholesome action. What I said to this person was hurtful and harmful. And what really begins to take root in your awareness is because everything is interdependent or interbeing, what you're doing to others, you are doing to yourself. So you begin to actually awaken that third level of wisdom, right? Panya or prajna. You have again the concentration as the second step and the wisdom as the third. So while you're in this disciplining, you're waking up your wisdom. And your wisdom is actually going to become more aware and awake and able to discern wholesome from unwholesome. You just start to feel it. It's not like conceptual. It's like, oh, wow, that was off, vibrationally off. What I said didn't come from the right part of my mind, right? You just have this deeper awareness of how you're conducting yourself. That's why in the Buddha's teaching, that when you're really training in this first stage of sila or shila, you have a noble bearing. You begin to really cultivate this to a point where it's like you're a royal, you're noble. In the original language, it's Arya. This is where we get the word Aryan, right? Arya in Pali and Sanskrit means noble. You literally begin to feel your nobility because that's who you are. You have this Buddha seed, which is the premier knowledge, wisdom, love, and compassion in all creation, waiting to be actualized, waiting to be discovered, and you are that. So when you begin to quiet the mind, wash the mind nicely, you begin to feel that the native state of your mind is noble, it's bright, it's happy. You don't have to do anything to feel this. You actually have to undo to feel it. It's never a conditioned happiness. It's not a happiness because this person said something nice to me, so wow, that was really good, I feel up. And it's not an unhappiness, ever. But what you'll begin to realize is even the best happiness that comes from outside of you is temporary. That's why part of the training in not concentration, in discipline or morality is to be very attentive to when these compliments come to you. Okay, that was a nice compliment. That felt really good. And, thank you. Thank you very much. But you're not moved at your core. You're not brought up by compliments and you're not brought down by insults. There's this deeper foundation or stability that you begin to rest in. And that's the nobility of your naked awareness or your pure mind. Okay? So we're going to get into this in some detail tonight. And before we do, I wanted to read a really short poem by a Polish-American poet by the name of Czilo Miłosz. And it is not spelt the way it sounds. You'll never get there from here. This is love. Love means to learn to look at yourself the way one looks at distant things. For you are only one thing among many, and whoever sees that way heals his heart. Without knowing it, from various ills. A bird and a tree say to him, friend. Then he wants to use himself and things so that they stand in the glow of ripeness. It doesn't matter whether he knows what he serves. Who serves best doesn't always understand. I thought that was very fitting for our talk tonight, because one of the things that we're going to see in a moment when we tell this story is you are only one thing among many. And when you begin to meditate deeply and you begin to look at yourself, you begin to realize the unity of humanity, of all life. And this idea of egocentricity and self-inflation and self-importance, even thinking that your needs should precede others, begins to really naturally diminish. Right? One of the beautiful things about a authentic meditation practice is none of this is scripted or packaged or, because so and so said so. This is what I have to do and this is what I'm supposed to be feeling. It's not artificial. It's actually coming from the deepest part of you. So you begin to actually feel this unification with all living things, so that the tree really does say, friend, because you're joined with this life. At a fundamental level, you realize that everything is reflecting back to you this one self, or Buddha mind, or Buddha nature. And we, again, don't start out this way. And that's going to kind of get into our story time now. We're going to be looking at the teachings of Ajahn Chah. And Ajahn Chah was a Thai forest Buddhist master. He passed away, I think, in 1980 something. A wonderful human being, and we could say, if we can say it, an enlightened master. And he has this they put a book together with his collected teachings, Food for the Heart. Highly recommend it. May do a book study with this one day. It's excellent. So Ajahn Chah, like I said, is a forest monk, and this scene that opens the book is written by one of his disciples who more than likely was there at this event at this time. And he writes so beautifully. I'm just going to quote the opening part. Night is falling swiftly. The forest reverberates with the undulating buzz of countless crickets and the eerie rising wail of tropical cicadas. A few stars poke dimly through the treetops. Amid the gathering darkness, there is a pool of warm light thrown from a pair of kerosene lanterns, illuminating the open area below a hut raised up on stilts. Beneath it, in the glow, a couple of dozen people are gathered around a small, solidly built monk who is seated cross-legged on a wicker bench. The air is filled with vibrant peace. Venerable Ajahn Chah is teaching. Now gathered there, he says, it's a motley crew as he calls it. You have the stable, the forest-dwelling monks that are always there near the master, mostly Thai and some Lao. You have a Brit, who's probably the guy writing the introduction, American, Canadian, a few other Europeans. And then as that circle expands, you have the nuns that are visiting there, etc. But you also have a diplomat and his wife in their starchy clothes. The wife is all coiffed and bedecked in jewelry, and she's sitting there with her diplomat husband, who are donating to the monastery, but they wanted to pay respect since they were traveling in the area. And then you have a scholar from Freiburg, Germany, visiting, and kind of even further out from the circle. And then this is where we pick it up again in our story time. He says, near the back, almost at the edge of the pool of light, sits a stern-faced man in his 30s. He is half turned to one side, as if his presence there is uncomfortable, tentative. He's a local tough guy, a Nakleng, deeply disdainful of all things supposedly religious. He nevertheless has a grudging respect for Luang Por, and Luang Por means venerable father, another name for Ajahn Chah. So a grudging respect for Luang Por, probably stemming as much from the monk's reputation for toughness as his powers of endurance, as from the recognition that as far as religious people go, he might be the real thing. But he's probably the one worth bowing to in the whole he's the only one worth bowing to in the whole province. He's angry and upset, sick at heart. A week ago, his beloved younger brother, who ran with his gang and with whom he'd been through 1,000 scrapes, came down with cerebral malaria and was dead within days. Since then, he has felt as if his heart had a spear through it, and that everything in the world had lost its flavor. If he had been killed in a knife fight, At least I could take revenge. What am I going to do? Track down the mosquito and bite him and kill it? Why not go see Luang Por Cha? A friend had said. So here he is. Luang Por smiles broadly as he makes a point, holding up a glass to illustrate his analogy. He has noticed the stark young figure in the shadows. Soon he has somehow managed to coax him to the front, as if he were reeling in a tough and wily fish. Next thing, the tough guy has his head in Luang Por's hands and is weeping like a baby. Next, he is somehow laughing at his own arrogance and self-obsession. He realizes that he's not the first or only person ever to have lost a dear one. The tears of rage and grief have turned to tears of relief. All of this happens with 20 total strangers around, yet the atmosphere is one of safety and trust. For although those assembled come from all walks of life and from all around the planet, they are all united at this one moment and place as Sahadamika, fellow Dhamma farers, or to use another expression from the Buddhist vernacular, they are all brothers and sisters in old age, sickness, and death, and thus belong to a single family. This kind of scenario was played out countless times during the 30 years that Ajahn Chah spent teaching. So when I first read that, truth be told, I sobbed. It just hit me. I wasn't expecting it. Here you have somebody completely walled off in himself, completely shut down, completely angry at the world, and in his mind, I'm sure, never going to believe any of this. But somehow, some way, he was brought in front of the master. And like we keep saying, none of this is conceptual. The master emits, we're told, these teachings say that when you're trained, you emit compassion at such a high level that everything in the forest can feel it, and you can feel it from miles away. And so this field of metta, or loving kindness and compassion, is what I'm sure soaked in to this gangster. And the breaking down and the image of him laying or kneeling at the master's feet and the master holding his head in his hands as he sobs. What occurred to me when I was able to compose myself is this is what we all have to come to. We all have to reach that point where we realize how long we've been resisting ourself, our deeper nature, our love. And this is what the breaking point will often look like. First, a sense of total release of rage and sadness, and then relief. Relief that finally we were able to touch that ancient wound and not run away from it, not hide from it, not numb or pretend it's not there. That we can actually touch it, feel it, let it completely express itself and wash through us, and then come out on the other side, clean, relieved. This is part of the training in sila, or morality. You start to love yourself, as we just read from Chila Milo, Miwash. Again, it's not spelled the same way it sounds. And so what we have here then is the tenderness and the gentleness of meditating for the sake of touching the wounds within ourselves, so that we can actually begin to feel this glow of healing at the very core of these wounds. That's what I loved about that story, that he was at least humble enough in front of all of those strangers to finally just give up, let go. And this letting go is really at the heart of Buddhist teaching. In fact, the culmination, you can say, of Buddhism is nibbana or nirvana. And what that is referring to is a total letting go. Finally. It's a detachment from being a self that you never were. Right? Because remember, the whole scope of Buddhism is that we are suffering because we are craving to fulfill desires that are stemming from a sense of delusion. Delusion at the very core of our heart, that we don't know ourselves and we're feeling incomplete because of this ignorance. And because of this incompleteness, our ignorance drives us outside of ourselves to find and seek fulfillment, which it never does find. And that's why Buddha's first realization, right? He woke up from that dream of being a self that he's not. What was the first realization? Life is dukkha. Life is unsatisfactory. You'll have highs and lows, as we were talking about before, but the highs never stay and the lows always come. You're never going to find the sweet spot at the level of the false self. And because you're not your true nature in your awareness, you're always going to feel off. Something's not right. And so when we begin to realize that this can only be conquered or undone through this inward journey, we begin to realize that letting go, as it says in Buddhism, is one of the best skillful means that you can develop. You do it right now. That's the only time you can really do anything. You learn to let go. And as you're letting go, I invite you also to begin to follow your breathing. This will make the service so much more rich and meaningful and efficacious for you. That as you begin to inhale, just pay attention to the tip of your nose and feel the breath come in. Feel it at the center of the heart and feel it at the lower part of your abdomen. And as you exhale, just simply pay attention to the breath. Feel it flow out from those three spots: lower abdomen, heart, and tips of the nostrils. You could do this the whole time that you're listening. Keep taking your attention back to your breath, back to this awareness of the in and the out, the coming and the going. And as you notice the in-breath, notice how the in-breath has to come to a place of letting go. It lets go. Your in-breath lets go. It lets go into what the yogis call shunya, the 0 point, the void. The in-breath stops being the in-breath, but there's a slight moment where there's no out-breath and there's no in-breath. That is that third part of your breath. That's the in-between. That's the 0, the void. And then the out-breath comes out of the void, and it too has a duration, and it too will fade and go back into the void. This is what everything is doing every moment. That's why another great Thai forest master, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, he says that you could actually just choose to focus on your breath your whole life as a meditator, and that will take you to enlightenment. Your breath has all of the information that you will ever need to wake up. Right? And so our busy minds have to calm down. Our busy minds are feverish, and they are chasing after excitement, and they are looking for things to validate and confirm our concepts, our beliefs. Meditation is not that. Real meditation. Real meditation is letting go of your desires. That was the second noble truth. We suffer because we crave. Craving is suffering. Desiring, right? And so the only way to stop the craving or the suffering, the Buddha says in the third noble truth, is you have to go into the 0 point. Right? Another word for it is nirodha. That's the word he uses. Stop. You have to stop. Just like the gangster. He had to let go. He had to stop. He had to face his wound, his pain, his suffering, but then he released it. And in the lap of the master, he felt the safety, the presence, the peace, the compassion. And then he was able to actually laugh at his suffering, because now it passes through. It comes to a resolution. The breath does this every moment. In fact, if you become very skillful at letting go, you can end all of your suffering in the next instant, because you'll begin to realize that we keep dragging it into the present moment, thinking that it's back there and it really exists, or it's going to happen out there in the future and I got to prepare myself and have some kind of a position or an agenda to meet that next conflict or problem or situation or craving. But when you meditate, let all that go. It'll be there when you come back. But for the moment, learn to live without it. Have you ever done that? Have you ever learned to live without your desires, your agendas, your identity, your fears, your upsets, your blame? So that's loving yourself. Learning to see that you're just like everybody else. Everybody else is going through this. And as a result, you can have compassion for yourself and for others. So that was the other thing that the poem from Chila Miwash had raised in my awareness. This is the second great commandment that Jesus talks about in the Gospels. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, how the hell are you going to do that if you don't love yourself? If you don't love yourself and you actually hate yourself, you're going to hate your neighbor. But maybe you'll pretend to love your neighbor. And you can always feel a pretender. You can always feel when somebody isn't really where they think they are. And they come from a place of trying to be something they're not. And when you really look at yourself, you'll see that as pretty much all the time. I mean, that's been my experience. Right? We are so identified as our mask. Even when we think we're in this place of deep peace, we're still the mask thinking it's in a state of deep peace. So that's why meditation is this constant discovery, right? This ability to actually see. Oh boy. Don't. Oh boy. Oh. Okay. So the ability to have your mask exposed to you oftentimes doesn't come through meditation. It actually comes through relationship. If you have quality people in your life, believe me, they're going to tell you when you are pretending and when you're not being true to your highest ideals, right? I have a wonderful relationship that I treasure because she has this compassion operating for me. And oftentimes, I don't have that same compassion or love for myself because I think I have to defend and protect this little me and prove that she's wrong in what she's seeing about me. And all the while, she's trying to help me get over these blind spots and these dark places within me so that I can actually be free of them. So this is where we pick it up with Ajahn Chah. Most people still don't know the essence of meditation practice. They think that walking meditation, sitting meditation, and listening to Dhamma talks are the practice. That's true too, but these are only the outer forms of practice. The real practice takes place when the mind encounters a sense object. That's the place to practice, where sense contact occurs. When people say things we don't like, there is resentment. If they say things we like, we experience pleasure. Now, this is the place to practice. How are we going to practice with these things? This is the crucial point. If we just run around chasing after happiness and running away from suffering, we can practice until the day we die and never see the Dhamma or the truth. When pleasure and pain arise, how are we going to use the Dhamma, the true teaching, to be free of them? This is the point of practice. Usually when people encounter something disagreeable, they don't open up to it. When people are criticized, for example, they may respond with, "Don't bother me. Why are you blaming me?" This is the response of someone who's closed themselves off. Right there is the place to practice. Right? Good, right? Good advice. When people criticize us, we should listen. Are they speaking the truth? We should be open and consider what they say. Maybe there's a point to what they say. Perhaps there is something blameworthy within us. They may be right, and yet we immediately take offense. When people point out our faults, we should feel grateful and strive to improve ourselves. This is how intelligent people will practice. Where there is confusion is where peace can arise. When confusion is penetrated with understanding, what remains is peace. Some people can't accept criticism. They're so arrogant. Instead, they turn around and argue. This is especially so when adults deal with children. Actually, children may say some intelligent things sometimes, but if you happen to be their mother, for instance, you can't give in to them. If you are a teacher, your students may sometimes tell you something you didn't know, but because you are a teacher, you can't listen. This is not right thinking. So this is the beauty of relationships, that when someone points something out about our character and we immediately take offense, and again, I'm just going to say this is me. I don't know if it's you. That's what I do 90% of the time. Well, maybe 86. If I'm being fair to myself. But that's the opportunity. That's when you can actually go, wait a minute, I'm trying to protect my false self. I'm trying to make my mask better and right. In fact, if I'm really serious about waking up, this is perfect because this is my blind spot. This is where I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not. And so I really deeply consider it. And sometimes I consider it and I realize later on, sometimes, minutes or hours or days later, that she was right or he was right. But oftentimes I find that, I'll stick to my guns and I'll try to prove to myself I know better. This isn't right. And sometimes, you don't have to always think that everybody's spot on about their assessment of you. But do take it into consideration. Do self-examine. Because one of the things that Ajahn Chah was fond of saying is, everything is teaching you all the time. The path is the guru. If you really take that in and you consider the impact of that, everything is teaching you all the time. The trees, the sunshine, the bird song, the honking traffic, the critical partner or friend, everything is the teaching. Are you being the student? Or are you being arrogant? Are you opening to the teaching? Or are you shutting down? That's where we self-examine. That's where the teaching can actually penetrate. And again, many of us, maybe not in word and deed, but certainly in character quality, are shut off like that gangster. We have an inner gangster. Maybe that's what I'll title this talk. Healing your inner gangster. And, we could be vicious when somebody points out a wounded part of ourselves, right? And they might not be doing it lovingly. They might be coming from a very critical place, very agitated and angry at you for being that. And here goes the same routine, that same cycle of that relationship dynamic where now that old wound gets triggered and you got to make sure you're justified in keeping it because they're the one that's critical or abusive. I don't know if this is reaching anybody else, but the point of the matter is we can actually turn the tables on that whole unconscious, repetitive imprinting. That's what meditation is for. look deeply at yourself, and know that you're going to get triggered as part of the teaching. That's what it's for. In fact, Ajahn Chah tells some very funny stories about when he's invited to teach. And he says, sometimes I get invited to give talks at important functions, but it's a nuisance for me to go. When I look at the people gathered there, I can see they haven't come to listen to the Dhamma. Some smell of alcohol. Some are smoking cigarettes. Some are chatting. They don't look at all like people who have come out of faith in the Dhamma. Giving talks at such places yields little fruit. People who are sunk in heedlessness tend to think things like, when's he ever going to stop talking? Can't do this. Can't do that. And their minds just wander all over the place. Sometimes they even invite me to give a talk just for the sake of formality. Please, give us just a short Dhamma talk, Venerable Sir. They don't want me to talk too much. It might annoy them. As soon as I hear people say this, I know what they're about. These people don't like listening to Dhamma. It annoys them. If I just give a short talk, they won't understand. If you take only a little food, will it be enough? Sometimes I'm giving a talk, just warming up to the subject, and some drunkard will call out, okay, make way for the Venerable Sir. He's coming out now. Trying to drive me away. If I meet this kind of person, I get a lot of food for reflection. I get an insight into human nature. It's like a person who has a bottle filled with water and then asks for more. There's nowhere to put it. Pour any more in, and it just overflows uselessly. It isn't worth the time and energy to teach such persons because their minds are already full. I can't put much energy into giving when no one's putting much energy into receiving. If their bottle had some room for more water, both the giver and the receiver would benefit. Right. So again, just return to the awareness of your breath. The inhale starts at the tip of the nostrils, goes to the heart center. Feel it going into the bottom of the diaphragm. And the exhale follows the reverse route. With each moment, come back to the tranquil mind. Collect yourself. If you feel your energy, your attention going out, dispersing, call it back. Just consolidate, come in. Right? This service is really about going in, not going out. This isn't entertainment. This is cultivation. Whether you are standing, sitting, or walking about, you can always study the things around you. Study in a natural way. Be receptive to all things, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, feelings, or thoughts. The wise person considers them all. In the real practice, we come to the point where there are no longer any concerns weighing on the mind. If we still don't know likes and dislikes as they arise, there will still be some anxiety in our minds. If we know the truth about them, we reflect, oh, there's nothing to this feeling of liking here. It's just a feeling that arises and passes away. Dislike, too, is just a feeling that arises and passes away. Why make anything out of them? If we think that pleasure and pain are personal possessions, then we're in for trouble. And these problems feed each other in an endless chain. This is how things are for most people. Some say, I haven't got time to practice meditation. I say, then how come you've got time to breathe? The practice of meditation isn't something you have to go running around for or exhaust yourself over. Just look at the feelings that arise in your mind. When the eye see forms, ear hears sounds, nose smells odors, and so on, they all come to the one mind, the one who knows. Now, when the mind perceives these things, what happens? If we like the object, we experience pleasure. If we dislike it, we experience displeasure. That's all. Right? But you remain unmoved, following your breath, paying attention to the flow. In breath and out. This first stage of the practice is also referred to in the Buddhist teachings as taming the mind. Because one of the things you'll find is you might be able to follow the breath for a few rounds, but then off you go. As one of my friends likes to say, thinking of Steven Seagal movies. And so you have this, sorry to give you that image. You have this ability to just take your breath back, rather your attention back to your breath. It's going to be jumpy, it's going to be unruly. In Zen Buddhism, it's referred to as taming the ox. So understand that. Don't fight, don't resist, don't be upset if the ox is putting up this problem of relaxing. Just stay on the breath. Watch your mind. Watch when it wanders. Watch what it says. Watch what it thinks. Watch the images that come up. Just watch. And know that everything that the mind is doing, this whole theater of the mind, arises, abides for a little while, and passes away. Just like the breath. It won't be long until you can begin to see that as the in-breath dissolves in the void, and the out-breath dissolves in the void, and the void is always there to receive and give birth to the breath, so too your mind has that void. It's one void, one space. And so when a thought or a feeling or an emotion arises, it abides a little while, and then it dissolves back into that void. And if you're really getting clear and paying attention, you can feel into that void. That's the ground. In fact, all the thoughts that come from it, all the feelings, all the sensations and emotions, in truth, when we really see them stripped of their personal attachments and the mask that wants to own and be possessed by them, we realize that the energy of these thoughts, feelings, and emotions are actually the void. But that might be getting ahead of ourselves because, like we said, if we are still that dirty rag or that dirty cloth, our mind hasn't been washed yet. The thoughts that we're going to have, the feelings that we're going to have, the emotions and memories, they're actually going to be of the nature of distraction, greed, anger, delusion. In fact, we won't be able to feel the void, see the void, and if we don't keep persisting with the practice, we will become completely identified as this false self. And that's why we come back again to the breath. Never lose heart. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on in this first stage of the practice, where we are purifying, training, or taming the mind, I should say, is that, and it occurred to me, it occurs, I think, to most people that are really taking this on, you feel really lonely. It's part of this process that you come to a place where you realize, because you're looking, that you're alone. Like you have friends around you, loved ones around you, but you're always alone. You come into this world alone, and you leave this world alone. And yet, the Buddhists actually call this the power of loneliness. The power of loneliness. And this is Chogyam Trungpa. He says, if you look at the Buddhist discipline from another angle, it has to do with loneliness or solitude. There are 6 categories of aloneness. Okay, so here are the 6 categories of aloneness. Less desire. So when you begin to really practice, your desire naturally abates. You're not driven by desire so much. You're not really looking to get. This getting is really getting tamed. It's losing its pull on you. There's a sense of contentment in aloneness or loneliness because you're coming to the ground of your being. Your mind is naturally happy, naturally peaceful, naturally compassionate and loving. So when you begin to touch your real nature, you have everything already. You don't have to go anywhere. So you're content. Avoiding unnecessary activities. You're just not really interested in exciting things, going out and doing things. You know, again, if you're not at this stage in your practice, this might sound completely unappetizing, like we were seeing with the stories of Ajahn Chah. Like, okay, master's coming out, you know, he's annoying us. Time to go. When's this guy going to stop talking? So if that's going on in your internal dialogue, you just know where you are. Just watch that. Doesn't mean anything, but that's where you see yourself currently. It's good to know that. And then the next one is morality, right? Not wandering in the world of desire and working with discursive thoughts, right? So these are the the deeper categories of aloneness. So Chogyam Trungpa goes on. He says, less desire means that you have less need for security. How about that? You're not worried about your future. Does that reach anybody? Like you're really not worried. You let worrying about your future go. And, you know, again, these concepts land, right? That's part of the teaching. You get the concept, you get the idea, but then you got to take it in and really work with the experience of knowing I'm letting go of worrying about my future. Like now I don't worry about my future. That becomes my experience. It's pulsing as a reality. It won't reach me anymore. Worrying about my future like bounces off. That's when you know you're fully baked. So that's security. Contentment means you are not always looking for something more. Right? Even in our conversation, like be in this place where you're still watching the breath, relaxing, being aware of what's coming through the eyes, the ears, the nose, senses on your feet and your chair, touching your legs. Like, be aware. And as a result of just being in this settled awareness, you're not looking for something more to come from me. It's just happening. And so you're abiding in a sense of contentment and peace. And what's happening is what's happening. You're not looking for more. Avoiding necessary activities means not trying to occupy yourself or look for companionship. Morality means that you keep being brought back to your practice of meditation. Not wandering in the world of desire means that you do not constantly search for relationships. Working with discursive thoughts means that you are overcoming your thoughts. Instead of regarding them as entertainment, you are relating to them very simply, like we saw. There's the attachment, there's the pleasant feeling, there's the unpleasant feeling. It comes and it goes. And then Rinpoche says this: unless you have a sense of aloneness, you cannot develop wakefulness. So it is absolutely and utterly important and necessary to feel lonely. And then he adds, to the extreme, if you like. The power of loneliness. You are conceived alone and you come out of your mother's womb alone. After you are born, your umbilical cord is cut. You are alone in the world. Somebody feeds you, sends you to school, and helps you grow up. And if something goes wrong with your economy, you can get food stamps or public assistance. So people do help, obviously. But such help is not fundamental help. It is just temporary. Basically, you have no help. You are alone. Absolutely alone. You are born that way, and you die that way. You come in alone, and you go out alone. You are nothing but yourself. You are without any other help but your own resources. Because you cannot borrow somebody else's flashlight, you have to dig one out of your own pocket and use it. If you really understood loneliness, you can become a real student. So the power of loneliness is necessary to wake up. He says loneliness and aloneness are not two different words. You can be both alone and lonely. It is absolutely necessary to relate to aloneness and loneliness because for a long time we have ignored them, right? It's been a problem we're trying to fix, our loneliness. What if it's not a problem? What if it's a major part of our practice to improve loneliness? Okay. So that's food for thought or food for your heart. So in the final few minutes, let's just sit and digest. Turn your attention onto your breath. So bringing all of your attention onto the inhale at the tip of the nostrils. You could even say in to yourself. Feel the breath come in at the tip of the nostrils. Feel it go to the heart. And feel it go all the way to the base of the diaphragm. And as you say the out breath, follow the whole current of the exhale from the diaphragm, the heart, and then feel it leaving the nostrils and disappearing. Your only job is to follow the breath. Blue bag's going to go around. If you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you can click the link and donate to the 5 p.m. service. Thank you very much. You can keep your mindfulness of breathing practice going on. But do remember that we meet here every Monday evening at 7:15 for A Course in Miracles. And also, if you're not on the email list and you would like to be, there's a clipboard on the right side as you go out. You can get the announcements of classes coming up, like the I Am That study of Sri Nisargadatta's book that begins in November. about the mic situation, everyone, but you. Oh, oh. All right.